It's too simple, the idea. It's like men and women make different amounts of money. Well, sorry, the problem isn't a problem of sex discrimination. It's an unbelievably bad idea.
But according to controversial Canadian sociologist and psychologist Jordan Peterson, it's a fight not worth having.
In my estimation, not only is it not reasonable, it's absolutely deadly. I think there's nothing that we could possibly do that's more ill-advised.
Well, why is it deadly? I mean, deadly is a very strong word.
It's been tried. It was tried throughout the 20th century to enforce equity outcomes, all through the communist bloc. That was the fundamental idea, to enforce equity outcomes. It didn't work well. It worked very badly. It's not like I'm happy about this, by the way. You know what I mean? It's not like I was hoping this would be the case and like I went and had a little ideology party about it. No one's happy about the fact that these differences between men and women happen to be intractable and that they produce often negative economic consequences.
Do you think that people's differences should be valued? Let's have a look at what you produce. Let's have a look at your outcomes and base it on that as opposed to your ability to negotiate at the contract stage.
Oh, well, you know, an intelligent company is going to do everything they can to evaluate their people on competence and reward them accordingly, right? I mean,
as opposed to whether they're agreeable or assertive?
Or extroverted or attractive. If you're extroverted and attractive, you're going to make more money. But that doesn't mean you're going to be better at what you do. It means there's a halo effect around you because you're attractive. People will value what you do more. It's like, you can't say that just because there's a difference between men and women on axis A, that the reason there's a difference is because they're men and women. You can't do that. It's elementary social science. You'd fail your first year psychology project if you set up an experiment like that.
Well, you know, perhaps those in power in Iceland will fail that course because they say that there is an unconscious bias, that there is an unconscious bias towards paying men more.
The unconscious bias literature is absolutely dreadful.
Well, the approach in Iceland seems to be, yes, there are myriad problems, but we're going to find a way to solve them.
Yeah, no, you're not. It's too complicated.
How long do you give them?
Until the project fails. I would say that'll probably take 15 years. And it'll produce walloping economic costs. Because it's not possible to solve a multivariate problem like that. It's technically impossible.
Why is an interest in people valued as highly as an interest in things? And why is agreeability not valued as well as assertiveness?
Well, it's a good question. It also depends on what you mean by valued, right? You mean the economic price that's put on it.
Absolutely, in terms of salaries.
Yeah, well, the thing about working with people, it's not easily scalable, right? Whereas working with things, man, that's scalable, right? I mean, if you write a computer program, you write a piece of software, like 1 billion people can use it. That's scalable. You're not going to have 1 billion human interactions in a day. So that's a big part of the problem.
Well, in Iceland, an energy company was about to go bankrupt. A new manager came in and said, OK, we've got to throw everything out and start again, and made a conscious decision based on his belief that it's a human right that men and women are paid equally. And so went out of his way to make the workforce within that company 50-50 as much as he could in terms of men and women being represented. So we're talking about engineers, we're talking about tradespeople, we're talking about in workshops, we're talking at the managerial level.
If you hire 50% women engineers and 50% male engineers, then the women engineers are less qualified because the pool of engineers is lower among women. So you can't hire 50% women engineers without producing a decrement in the quality of the engineers because this selection pool is too small. You can't do that on a large scale. You might be able to do that in one company.
Yeah, and they certainly argue that it's not tokenism and they're not hiring second-rate women.
They might argue that, but if you did it on a large scale, that's what would happen. Because look, you think about it mathematically. If there's 10 times as many male engineers as there are female engineers, and you insist upon hiring 50-50, then obviously the degree to which the female engineers are proficient cannot be the same as the degree to which the male engineers are proficient. It's mathematically impossible.
So you're saying don't even try?
No. I'm saying something much more specific than that. Now, one company might be able to do that for a short period of time in one isolated location. You know, but there, of course, if you have a new manager come in and he's doing all sorts of new things, there's 50 reasons why the company is going to fail or succeed. And you can say, well, it was because of the gender equity policies. It's like, yeah, well, it's a multivariate problem.
But they do point to the diversity now of the workforce, to improved morale, to improved strategies on how to come up with solutions, to their increased profitability.
None of that research is credible. There's no evidence whatsoever that diversity as measured by racial or gender representation has any bearing whatsoever on creativity, productivity, outcome, any of the things you're measuring. None of that research is credible in the least. It's not at all. Men and women make different amounts of money. Well, sorry, that's not a fine-grained enough analysis. More agreeable people get paid less. Why? They're not as assertive.
So does agreeability mean that you're just not as good at the job?
No.
So shouldn't...
It depends on the job, I would say.
Yeah.
It's actually probably makes you better. It probably makes you better at jobs that involve care of people, because agreeableness seems to be that trait that facilitates interpersonal care. So my suspicions are, the research on this isn't solid, but my suspicions are that agreeable nurses are better than disagreeable nurses. But we don't know, and the effect isn't that large. Agreeableness tends more to tilt you in terms of interest than in terms of competence. That's how it looks so far.
If I'm understanding what you're saying, the picture you paint is a bleak one.
No, I don't think it's particularly bleak. You know, it looks like real salaries are on the rise and general levels of poverty around the world are declining incredibly rapidly. Women are being educated at an unbelievably high rate compared to 30 years ago. Like, there's all sorts of reasons to be optimistic, but equity is not one of them. It's a bad idea, and we're going to pay for toying with it.